Eric plans to rent a beach house for a week. He has a coupon for 20% off the daily base rate of $200. He will also have to pay an additional $20 for utilities. Which expression represents this situation if D represents the number of days? Did anybody get an answer? Okay, Travis? Very good. C is correct. Now let's talk about how he would get that. How much do you have to pay a day just to rent the beach house? $200. How much do you have to pay a day for the utilities? $20. Okay, but it is not $220 per day because what else do they talk about in this problem? 20% off. So you need to figure out what 20% is of 200. So multiply it by 0.20 and tell me what you get. Okay, so does that mean now he's only going to pay $40 a day for the beach house? No, what do we have to do with that number? Subtract it. He's getting $40 off. So instead of $200 a day, he's paying how much a day? Tanae, you're not paying attention. Right. And then $160 a day plus the $20 a day for utilities adds up to $180 per day. Yeah. That's basically what I did. Look, 220 take away 40. Okay, Naya, what was your question? Okay. Any other questions? How do we get 180? Okay. All right, number 8. The directions say solve the quadratic equation by completing the square or quadratic formula. I'm going to do it by quadratic formula because most of you have forgotten the steps of complete the square. Now, the very first thing you need to do if you're solving by quadratic formula is what? Right, you need to identify the A value, B value, and C value, which are what, and what. Correct. Once you have identified the A, B, and C, what do you do next? Right. First, go ahead and take care of the discriminant, which is the part of the formula over there that says B squared minus 4AC. Parentheses are crucial. If you don't have them, it could be wrong. In the B place, we plug in the negative 20. In the A place, we plug in 1. And in the C place, we plug in 65. Type that in and tell me what you get. Correct. Okay, now we have to continue on with the remainder of the quadratic formula, which is on the whiteboard, and it will be there tomorrow. X equals negative B. What will that end up? Positive 20, because if your B is already negative, when you plug it in right there, it'll become a negative 20, which is positive 20. Plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, and we already did that and got 140. Divided by 2 times A, and what is your A value? Your A value is 1. So when you multiply it by 2, you get 2. Now from here, what should you do? Right, you should type it in the calculator. Since it's a fraction, you'll start by doing alpha y equals n over d. You'll type in the 20 plus the square root of 140 over 2 first. Then the second time, you'll type in 20 minus the square root of 140 over 2. I am assuming that everybody in here knows how to type this in. If you don't, you better lean over to your neighbor and ask for help, and if they can't help you, come up here. 28. But that's why tomorrow when I come back in this room when the bell rings, y'all all better be seated with your desk clear. We're not even doing a warm-up. We won't have time. 28 questions in 45 minutes. It's going to take the whole time. Okay, so now when you typed it in with the plus sign, what did you get? 15.9. When you typed it in with the minus sign, what did you get? 4.1, because it's like 4.08, so 4.1. Okay. Okay. Now, none of these choices look like that or these two numbers. So what you should do is try to narrow it down. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So we should have a 10 plus or minus. Now, to verify that that is for sure correct, now everybody type in 10 plus the square root of 35. And isn't that one of the answers we got with the quadratic formula? Okay, now type in 10 minus the square root of 35, which is another answer, so that's the right one. This isn't extra stuff. This is them simplifying. Instead of them simplifying it to decimals, they're simplifying it in radical form. Because if you had 20 plus or minus the square root of 140 over 2, you could take the square root of 140 and simplify it into 14 times 10, which is then 7 times 2 and 2 times 5. So you circle your 2's, kill 1, kick 1 out, and then instead of 140, now we have 7 times 5 on the inside, which is 35, right? Now look, 20 over 2 will become 10. 2 over 2 will become 1, and then the square root of 35. So now do you see how they got that? Not that y'all have to, because I'm just teaching y'all to narrow it down and type it in to make sure it matches up with your decimals. Okay, number 9. Which of these is the result of completing the square for the expression? I'm going to quickly go over complete the square, but then I'm going to give you another alternative in case you don't feel like you'll remember how to complete the square. The first thing I would do is set it equal to 0. No, because it's not really a formula, it's steps. I can give you like the b over 2 squared formula. But the first thing you have to do before you even get to that formula is what? Not with complete the square. Remember, with complete the square, the very first thing you need to do is move the constant to the other side. So this negative 36 would need to be added over, and it would become positive 36. Then at that point, you use the formula b divided by 2 squared, and I will put that one on the board. What is the b value? Divided by 2 squared? 9. We spent 2 days on it. Okay, x squared plus 6x plus 9. Remember, you added in on both sides? And so, on the right side, you can just simply combine those like terms, and that makes, say, 45. On the left side, you now have a trinomial that can be factored. And remember, they match, because this is a perfect square trinomial. Anytime you do the b divided by 2 squared, you're creating a perfect square trinomial, because x plus 3 and x plus 3 will work. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. Since they match, can't you just write it once and square it, which looks like C and D? But then to get it to look like this, wouldn't the 45 have to be subtracted over? And so it's D. Okay, well, I'm about to give you another way to do it that is an easy way if you don't remember how to complete the square. Okay, Leah said that what she did, so you went through every choice and double distributed out those and then subtracted off and it became that. That's one way to get the right answer, but that's kind of time consuming to sit here and multiply that times itself and then combine like terms and then minus 30 to all 4 problems. You mean 6 plus 6. Right. But the easiest way to do it is go to y equals, type this in. Okay, so everybody do that now. Go to y equals and type in x squared plus 6x minus 36. Okay, now go down to y2 and type in choice A. Okay, so we're on question 9, and so the first thing I typed in was x squared plus 6x minus 36, the trinomial they gave me. Now in y2, I'm going to type in choice A, that x plus 6 squared minus 30. Then I'm going to type in x plus 6 squared minus 49. Then I'm going to type in x plus 3 squared minus 36. And then I'm going to type in D, x plus 3 squared minus 45. And I know this even takes time, but if you don't know how to complete the square and you don't want to take the time to like FOIL this and minus 30 from it, this is the fastest way. Now that you have the question typed in and all 4 answer choices, you graph it. And well, just watch. Okay, the first one that pops up on your screen is the original. The next thing that you see graphing on your screen would be choice A. And is choice A the same parabola as the original? So you would mark off A. Then the next thing that you see graph is not the same, so you would mark off B. And then there comes another one that's not in the same place as the blue one, so you mark off C. And then when you're expecting another parabola to come, on your screen you would see nothing happen, so you would realize it's D. Well, you would, like, if you're watching your calculator, you're gonna know. I promise. But you have to watch each one come in. Okay, so, oops. So it's D. Now, the only other option though, if you graph it and you can't figure it out, is what Leah said. You literally would have to write out like x plus 6 times x plus 6. Double distribute that and then minus 36 and see if it becomes that. If it doesn't, you would go to choice B and do the same thing. It's very important that you do your best to figure out which one of these is correct, because you're going to have to now use that to answer these questions, which is 3 more test questions. Okay, so it's very important that you do your best to get this one right, because if you don't, these next 3 are going to be wrong. Well, possibly not this one. What's the answer to this one? Remember, standard form is this, ax squared plus bx plus c. Vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And remember, it's called vertex form because you can see the vertex. And aren't all 4 of those in vertex? So even if you did get this one wrong, you should still be able to get that one right, but then these are going to be, well, actually, this still shouldn't be a problem, because all 4 of these are going to open how? Up or down? Up. Aren't all of them a positive 1 in the front? So even if you don't have the right choice pick, all of them open up. So that means the vertex is going to be a max or a min? A min. Guys, if a parabola opens up, the vertex is at the bottom, which would be a minimum. Now, to be able to get this one right, you will have to have the right equation chosen. Now, you're going to have choices though tomorrow. This one's not going to be free response. You'll have choices. Does anybody know, when you look at this, what the vertex is? Naya? Very good. -3, -45. Remember, the number on the inside is always the opposite sign because of the minus. It was a minus a -3, which made it plus. And then the k is a -45. If you're not sure and you have it graphed, can't you see to get to that parabola that you would have to go left 3 first? So it would be -3 and then way down. So negative, negative. Okay, now turn to the next page. Yes, Marcus? No. If you get number 9 wrong, then yes, you're going to get this one wrong. But you might not get this one or this one because all 4 of them are in vertex form, and all 4 of them are positive A, which will open up, so it'll be minimum. No, I've renumbered it, so on the test, like, If this is question 9, this would be question 10, question 11, question 12. Yeah? You've learned how to factor by bubble method. Then you learned how to factor by GCF if the A is greater than 1. If the A is greater than 1 but you can't GCF it, you learn the A times C method. A times C method. It's just where you have to multiply the A times the C because the A can't be factored out. And you also learned how to complete the square, and you also learned quadratic formula. Quadratic formula will work for all of them. So as long as you can get it in equal to 0 and identify A, B, and C, you can solve any of these with quadratic formula. So I'm trying to think if there's another. We'll go to the next page. So now you're not paying attention. Number 11, probably the easiest question on the whole test. What are the zeros of the graph shown at the right? B, right. It crosses at -4 and 0. So the zeros are -4 and 0. Remember, zeros is just another word for x-intercepts or solutions. All right, number 12. What do y'all think? It's D. Because remember, it crosses at -1, so one of your solutions is -1, and the other solution is -5. But when they're written in factored form, they're the opposite sign. Because remember, when we learned how to factor and solve, when we got to this step, didn't we take this and set it equal to 0? What do you mean, can it be positive? Right, but that would make this x minus 5 would hit the x-axis at +5. And x minus 1 would hit the x-axis at +1. If you're not sure, you could graph them. Graph this, and then hopefully you can at least narrow it down where you only have to graph 2 of them and not all 4 of them. But if you graph this, graph the one you think it is, and see if it makes the same parabola. If it doesn't, try a different one. Yes? Yep. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about with number 12? That if you're confused and you're not sure if it's B or D, just graph B and graph D and see which one looks like that parabola. You don't even have to graph the original because you're already looking at a picture of it. You would just need to graph the choice you think it is and see if it matches up with what's right here on the paper. All right, number 13. What must be added to x squared plus 18x to complete the square? Any ideas? Okay. Yeah. Very good. How'd you get that? You're right. You thought of the numbers that would add to 18, and then you knew those numbers would multiply to 81. Remember, when you're trying to complete the square, to figure out what number goes right here, what number you need to add, that's where you do the b divided by 2 squared. The b is 18, divided by 2 is 9, 9 squared is 81. You're just trying to figure out what goes right here so that the numbers will add to make 18 and multiply to make whatever that is. Another thing that somebody suggested last period that I thought was a pretty good idea, they said they had no clue how to do it, so they literally plugged in a 9, graphed it. They said it didn't make a parabola. Then they plugged in an 18 right here. They graphed it and said it didn't make a parabola. Let me try that. Solve using any method. So what method would you use? You could say A is 7, B is 6, C is -16. Or, to save even more time, when I look at these choices, some of them look similar, but like that has a 1.1 and that has a 1.1, but that has a +2 and that has a -2. So, and then this one has a -1.1, but it has a +2. They're all different enough that you could really just graph it. Put this in y equals and see what it looks like. Okay. Just keep using it for now. It should work for the rest of the class. Okay, is that what y'all's looks like? So over here, doesn't it look like it's crossing at -2? And over here, doesn't it look like it's crossing a teeny bit past 1? So which choice would that be? Remember, it's crossing at -2 and a teeny bit past +1. C. If you don't know how to do it that way, which I'm hoping you do, you can do the quadratic formula and it will give you those two answers. But with only 45 minutes, you need to try to graph as much as you can and save time and not spend all your time doing the formula. I know, but what do you mean if you put the wrong number in? You just... Well, don't. You could easily just mess up your grade by putting the wrong number in the quadratic formula. Okay. You do it however, but... No, you forgot the squared. You see, yours just says 7x. There's no squared. I'll put it in the wrong place. Okay, now let's look at number 15. Find the value of n such that x squared minus 15x plus n is a perfect square trinomial. So what are they trying to do here? Aren't they basically asking you what needs to be added here? And didn't we just do one like that in 13? They're just wording it differently. Instead of calling it complete the square, they're saying to create a perfect square trinomial, which is what you do when you complete the square. So what should I do? Right, the -15, which is the b, divided by 2 squared. It's a fraction, so to type that -15 divided by 2 in, you would do what first? Alpha y equals n over d for numerator over denominator, and then -15 over 2, and then squared. 225 over 4. Yep. Anytime you're trying to complete the square or make a perfect square trinomial, you just do b divided by 2 squared, and that will be your c value. No, when you use alpha y equals n over d, you don't have to. If you choose to type it in like this, -15 divided by 2, you do have to put parentheses that way. And it gives it to you as a decimal, which you would then have to go back to alpha y equals number 4 and change it to a fraction. I would just try to use alpha y equals. Okay, number 16. Solve using any method. What method do you think we should use? Right, just graph it. 4x squared minus 12x minus 16. Okay, you look for where it crosses the x-axis, and those are your answers. It crosses at -1 and again at +4. So the answer is C, -1 and +4. Okay, number 17. This begins the part of the test that is all free response tomorrow. Use the function 8x squared minus 24x equals -16 to answer, it should say both parts. Identify the values for A, B, and C. What is A? 8. What is B? And what is C? +16. Before you can ever attempt the quadratic formula, don't you have to set it equal to 0? So that 16 would need to be added back over, and then it would be set equal to 0. It's just like that tomorrow. Okay, you're going to have to set it equal to 0 first. Now, it says find the solution using the quadratic formula. But before I took the time to do the quadratic formula, I would do what first? Graph it. Especially considering that I'm looking at it and all of those are divisible by 8, kind of leads me to believe that my answers are going to be whole numbers because 8's the GCF. So go ahead and graph it and see where it crosses. 8x squared minus 24x plus 16. Well, yeah, I mean, before you do quadratic formula, you'd have to add the 16 over. It has to be set equal to 0 to graph or to do quadratic formula. Hold on one second. Okay, see how it crosses at 1 and 2? So those are your solutions. Why would you, like if you want to do quadratic formula instead of graphing, you still have to make this side equal 0. So to get this to be a 0, you add 16 and it cancels, and then you add it over here, so it's plus 16 on this side. All right, number 19. We throw an object upward from the top of a, this should say 1,400, not 1,200, 1,400 foot tall building. The height of the object measured in feet, t seconds after we threw it, is represented by this equation. Where is the object 3 seconds after we threw it? What would you do? Well, for this one, you could graph it, but I would plug in 3. See how it's 3 seconds? Okay, and doesn't it say t represents seconds? So you just replace the t's with 3. So it'd be negative 14 times 3 squared plus 150 times 3 plus 1,400. And when you type that in, you get what? 1,724? Okay, so that's how high it is in the air after 3 seconds. So really, this should not say through. Because even though, yes, it's starting out at a 1,400 foot tall building, I don't think anybody can throw something 324 feet in the air, especially at 3 seconds. In 3 seconds, that's okay. But yeah, but they're throwing it upward. Okay, how long does it take the object to hit the ground? How would we figure that out? You should graph it. Okay, so go to your calculator and do y equals negative 14x squared plus 150x plus 1,400. Marcus, pay attention. It's not just a line, it's that you can't see the rest of it. When you can't see the whole parabola, your best option is to go to the table. Second graph is second table. No, just use X instead of T. Anytime you're trying to graph one, I don't care what letter they had on the paper, you just use an X. Okay, so now, can't you see with the table that at 0 seconds, the thing you threw is at 1,400 feet, because remember you're starting on the top of the building. And then at 1 second, it starts getting higher, 2 seconds even higher, 3 seconds even higher, 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 until it reaches its maximum height at 1,800 feet. And how long did it take to do that? 5 seconds. And then at that point, it starts dropping and continues to drop. Ten seconds, 11 seconds, 12 seconds, 13, 14, 15. Okay. At 17 seconds, it's below ground, which we know is not really possible. So doesn't that mean it hit the ground sometime between 16 and 17 seconds? So we'll just put 16 point something. The only way to know the for sure answer would be to do what? Quadratic formula. But tomorrow, it's a whole number. Okay, tomorrow it's a whole number. When you look tomorrow, you will see a 0 over here when it hits the ground. Okay? All right, number 20. If a toy rocket is launched vertically upward from ground level with an initial velocity of 128 feet per second, then the height h after t seconds is given by this equation. How long will it take for the rocket to return to the ground? So they basically want to know when it hits the ground, how long has that been? So what do you need to do? Graph it. Oh, and before I do, I heard somebody a while ago talking about graphing it to figure out the 3 seconds, and you could do that. See when this one's graphed, if I go up to 3 seconds, And isn't that what we got when we plugged in 3? So you could also do it that way. Okay, so now let's graph the last one. Negative 14x squared plus 132x. Okay, there it went up. Now really, even though it's on here, that's not there because that's below ground. So it started here and then it came back down where? Between 9 and 10. So you can just write between 9 and 10 seconds or 9 point something. No. Okay, so that's when it'll hit the ground, somewhere between 9 and 10 seconds. How long will it take the rocket to get to its maximum height? Well, can you see how high it gets on the screen? So what should you do? The table. Second graph will take you to the table. And then look, it starts out at 0, 0, which is before it's left the ground, no time has passed. Then it starts going up, and what's the highest it gets? 310, and how long did it take to get there? 5 seconds. So 5 seconds is how long it took to get there. 310 is its max height. If you want to be successful, you've got to study. And that does not involve just going home and looking at these answers. It involves reworking them. Now, I know you don't all have a graphing calculator, but I would at least try to do quadratic formula on some of these tonight. Look over, complete the square steps. You've got to study. And really, it would just help you the most just to rewatch the video.